Chapter 36 Mum's Version. The nightmare started on the 7th of May, 1999, when Stephanie began to feel unwell. The GP assured us that there was no cause for concern, but decided to refer her to an ENT specialist at the local hospital, believing her symptoms of dizziness and vertigo may have been due to an inner ear infection. While doing an examination, the ENT specialist noticed unusual, rapid movements in her pupils and called in his colleague, a neurological consultant. The neurologist, who turned out to be Dr. Ken Dawson, invited Stephanie back for more neurological examinations. Stephanie was later sent for an MRI scan. Believing that not much was wrong with her, she smiled through it. At this point, Stephanie could not have looked more beautiful or fit. We decided to go privately so that we could find out quickly what was wrong with Stephanie, and she wanted to get back into the water to train for her next competition. The results of the scan were due in 2 days' time. Stephanie carried on training. During the next day's training session, the coach called me to collect Stephanie as she couldn't read the clock and kept on bumping into the other swimmers. She was also very shaky and wobbly, and when she got out of the pool, we were not to know then that it would be the last time that Stephanie swam in the Bath University pool and signalled the end of her life as a swimmer. Stephanie's results were due the following day. Her driving test was also scheduled. The instructor decided that due to Stephanie's dizziness, it would be better to cancel the test, which we duly did. This was just the beginning of many such cancellations. Waiting for the results during that day was a nightmare. My mind was on overdrive, imagining all kinds of illnesses, most specifically a brain tumour. The appointment was a very slow process, in which Dr. Dawson examined Stephanie thoroughly first, and then, much later, told us the results of the MRI scan. He told us that he had found widespread lesions on her brain, which could be due to a recent virus or possibly multiple sclerosis. He was hoping it was the former and that Stephanie's symptoms would disappear and there would be no need for further action or appointments. Unfortunately, it was to be the latter. We knew nothing of MS, and the doctors told us not to read any books on the subject and to just forget the possibility. Stephanie seemed fine. She was 17, and at that point in life always expecting her glass to be half full, not half empty. In other words, she was extremely positive. She seemed relieved that it was not a tumour. The doctor asked us what we thought it would be. My answer was a tumour, and Mike's was mad cow's disease. Dr. Dawson told Stephanie to carry on with her life as normal, and to do as much as she felt able. She was even planning to be back training for the national competitions, which would take place in July. For me, treating Stephanie as normal with swellings on the brain was impossible. I wanted to wrap her up in cotton wool. I felt useless and that there was nothing I could do for her to make her better. Stephanie would not allow herself to be sick and have time off school. She carried on as usual, apart from swimming. This period of time, although worrying, was probably the easiest time of the illness, as Stephanie was still very positive. She still felt the whole thing would just go away and that there was every chance that she would be back to her former life and continuous training. I did buy and read books on MS, which absolutely terrified me. I read them in private. I didn't want her to worry about the possibility of her having this chronic, debilitating disease at 17 years old. The days turned into weeks, and Stephanie's condition did not improve. In fact, it deteriorated. Her sleep pattern became very erratic, and more symptoms appeared. Her memory became impaired, and she found it very difficult to retain any information she had learned during her A-level lessons. I became more worried about Stephanie as she became depressed and irritable because she was unable to swim. She was also getting very worried about not being able to retain information she understood during the lessons. But as soon as the lesson had finished, the information disappeared from her memory. She started to panic as she had been above average and had always found her studies easy. This was a new experience for Stephanie. But because she'd always found school easy, She'd been able to carry on with training and do A-levels simultaneously. Stephanie read about and started a new low-fat diet and high polyunsaturates, almost no saturated fat. She excluded many things from her diet, including chocolate, ice cream, crisps, red meat, etc. She started taking large amounts of primrose oil capsules, vitamins, and minerals as described in an MS book. This new diet seemed to alleviate some of her symptoms. The whole family went on a holiday to Tenerife, which Stephanie enjoyed, apart from falling a few times and having feelings of tiredness. She seemed well on this holiday. She also went to Spain with her boyfriend and his family for a week, which was not as successful. She went horse riding and realized that this was another thing that she could no longer do. She could not get on the horse as her legs were too weak. During this holiday, more symptoms appeared, such as her right leg giving away. Also during this time, she had no periods whatsoever, so the doctor sent her for a scan, which turned out to be normal. She had to wait many more months for her periods to return to normal. Stephanie was also becoming more and more frustrated that she could not go to the Bath University training. However, she returned to Corsham Swimming Club, but felt that she was becoming slow, so did not enjoy it. She also had extremely bad symptoms and was unable to walk back to the changing rooms after a training session. I saw her once during one of her sessions, and it was so upsetting. I could not go back with her to watch her swim. It was as though she was already crippled, and the beautiful, graceful, and coordinated movements that enabled Stephanie to swim so fast previously had disappeared. It was a nightmare. Stephanie still tried to run and train, but it was almost impossible. She had previously bought a treadmill from funds that she had won when she was voted Junior North Wales Sports Personality of the Year, and she tried to use this daily. At this point, her legs were still working when she wanted them to, but she was only able to run for approximately 5 minutes, when previously she would have run for at least half an hour. She was very stressed knowing that she was losing all the fitness she had worked so hard to build up. On her return from holiday, she went to collect the results of her maths module, which she had failed. Stephanie was especially upset about this, as maths was one of Stephanie's strong points. She decided that she would drop maths and carry on with her other two A-levels in economics and biology. This was just the start of Stephanie trying to come to terms with failure, as she had not known it before. Just after a Christmas, when Stephanie's symptoms worsened slightly, we went again to see Dr. Dawson. He confirmed that the results from the examination showed she had deteriorated quite rapidly and dramatically. He prescribed a course of steroids. She had already had the tablet form, which had not worked. She had to go into hospital during the day for intravenous steroid treatment, although she came home at night. This was a very depressing time for all of us, as the symptoms were worsening, and Stephanie had had no remission. Dr. Dawson also confirmed that it was multiple sclerosis. While in the hospital, Dr. Dawson summoned me to speak to him in private. He told me that he was extremely worried about Stephanie and the way she had deteriorated so rapidly. He was very concerned about the memory loss that Stephanie had been experiencing from the start. This made me extremely upset and worried. Why did this have to happen to someone who was so fit, healthy, and loved life to the extreme? She had never smoked, taken drugs, or had excess of alcohol. She always ate extremely healthy. You could not fault her for that. I started thinking back as to how this nightmare could have happened to someone so fit and healthy. She had suffered an ear infection that would not get better, and had been prescribed 2 consecutive courses of antibiotics, and then an antibiotic spray for the ear. She stopped training during this for about a week, and then went back to her training before she was fully recovered. She was due to compete in the national championships in Scotland. We were advised by her coach that this was an extremely important event, and even though Stephanie was not completely fit, she should compete. In hindsight, I realise now that I should not have let her. She travelled to Scotland by plane so that she would not be unduly tired for the championships. She did compete, but her times were not good, generally. She was due to travel to China for the World Schools Games and needed a hepatitis A and typhoid injection. I was not sure that she should have this injection due to her ear infection, so I made an appointment to see Dr. Jones. He assured me that as long as she didn't have a temperature, she should go ahead and have the necessary injection, which she did. For me, this injection was a possible cause of Stephanie's MS. She never seemed to be well after that. She travelled to China and her times were still slower. She should have won, but didn't. One other factor in all this was stress. She was trying to do too much. She was training some mornings and every evening, attending school every day, and having driving lessons. She was also trying to fit in seeing her boyfriend every day. She did not show any signs of stress, but looking back on this time, she must have been shattered. She should have possibly given up her A-levels and just concentrated on the swimming. It was a hard decision, which is why we just let her continue. She was also having massive amounts of a sports drink, which was provided by the Bath University. In hindsight, once again, this contained high amounts of phenylalanine, which is not good for the nervous system. I know that MS was not in her system before. She was so coordinated. She did ballet when she was 5 years old and was moved up to an older class because she was so good. Her swimming strokes were always excellent. This could not have been achieved had she been uncoordinated. I know for sure that she has only recently been affected with this awful disease. We heard about a new drug which made the symptoms of MS a third better, and most patients who had used it had experienced a third fewer relapses. We asked about the possibility of this drug for Stephanie, but, although she fitted the criteria perfectly, Wiltshire Health Authority did not prescribe the drug to its MS sufferers on the grounds of expense. Bath area did prescribe the drug to some of its sufferers. This was definitely a lottery. I wrote to the Conservative MP for North Wiltshire, James Gray. He was very supportive and helpful, and sent me much details concerning other sufferers in the area and in the county, and the problems they had. He also sent me the latest details on the government's view on the drug. He invited Stephanie and us to lobby Parliament on the 8th of March 2000, and other MS sufferers. Stephanie had to decide on whether she wanted to go public with her MS. After much deliberation, she decided that everyone who mattered to her knew of her condition, and that by going public she may be helping to stop the unfairness of the postcode lottery. She told James Gray that she would join the campaign. During the following hours, she was bombarded with journalists, radio station hosts, etc. Although Stephanie was not at all prepared for the massive reaction, she dealt with it very professionally. She was photographed and interviewed for the national papers as well as the locals. Her visit to Westminster was also televised. It amazes all how well she dealt with all the questions, as some of them were very distressing, and reminded her how well she did in the swimming world, even showing footage of her swimming days. Stephanie made a very big impression for the MS cause. The Bath Chronicle newspaper decided they would back a campaign for Stephanie in order to stop the postcode lottery issue and hopefully influence the Wiltshire Health Authority to allow the drugs that may help Stephanie's symptoms from deteriorating any further. The campaign was extremely forceful and Stephanie's picture appeared daily in the Chronicle. The reporters always found news to accompany the pictures of postcode lottery issues. During this time, Stephanie had many positive responses from people from all walks of life. Many of these responses lifted her spirits and made her feel that there were people out there who actually understood the way she felt. She had to wait many more months for the Wiltshire Health Authority when the disease continued attacking her myelin sheath, when Stephanie's condition was deteriorating at a rapid rate. If Stephanie had been prescribed the drug immediately, who knows what differences it could have made. The drug may have been able to arrest the deterioration before it went too far. After months of the Bath Chronicle campaign, we heard from Dr. Dawson. He wanted to do all he could for Stephanie and was still very worried about her deterioration. He decided he would appeal to the health authority and to let them know that Stephanie's case should be treated as an exception due to the rapid deterioration and memory loss. We were pleased that he was backing Stephanie's case, but I personally felt very frightened that he was still worried about Stephanie's condition. I also wrote to the health authority's appeal panel before they met to let them know what kind of person Stephanie was before contracting this disease, and some of the problems that she had encountered because of it. I told them how bright and active she was, always in the top 8 in her year group, winning Sports Personality of the Year. the national record holder in backstroke at 16 years old. I also told them how quick she was as a baby. How could a panel decide on Stephanie's future without knowing something about her? The following few weeks were very difficult as we waited for the results of the panel. One morning, however, Dr. Dawson phoned and wanted to speak to both Stephanie and I together. He told us that the health authority had decided to allow a special exception in Stephanie's case because of her rapid deterioration. We were over the moon. At last, Stephanie had been given a chance to move forward. On hearing the results, we had many and varied responses. Obviously, the Bath Chronicle were overjoyed to hear the news. Some of Stephanie's fellow sufferers stopped talking to Stephanie and refused to come to a dinner that she had invited them to the following week. The television crews came round again to interview Stephanie, and once again she was on local TV. She also appeared on the Trevor McDonald show. The MS nurse came round and demonstrated to us both how to give injections. Stephanie picked this up very quickly. I was not so good. I felt extremely unsure of giving my daughter injections. She started on the beta interferon drugs soon after that time. She was extremely well for the next couple of months. In fact, she was almost back to normal. Stephanie continued to do her A-levels at school and hardly had any absent days. She was continually worried that she was not retaining the information that was given. She went on, however, to take her A-levels. Because she had problems reading the words, they would dart from one place to the next, and she had double vision. She was allowed a reader during the exams, which I feel helped her confidence. She then went on holiday to Tenerife with her sister and some friends. This was not a good time for Stephanie. She left behind part of her medication, which we managed to send out on the next flight. But the immediate situation was extremely stressful for both Stephanie and Christy. She also had her wallet stolen containing credit cards and cash. This was also a bad experience for her. All her symptoms reappeared, with some new ones. Christy was also very stressed, trying to organise Stephanie during the holiday, and they came back from there almost at each other's throats, having been extremely good friends all their lives. Stephanie came back from holiday very tired and not very well at all. During their holiday, I collected both Stephanie and Christy's A-level exam results from school. Stephanie had all but failed all of them, but Christy got a B in the module that Stephanie had failed on. This time was dreadful for Stephanie. She knew that she had revised all the work, but she could not remember it when it was necessary. It was extremely frustrating for a girl who was so bright and intelligent to fail all of her A-levels. I tried to reassure her that most people who had been through what Stephanie had would not have even sat them. Shortly after returning from holiday, we realised the new fridge was not working, which meant that all of Stephanie's medication had been spoiled. This was another worry for Stephanie, although we later managed to recoup the money from the house insurance. It meant, however, that Stephanie had been injecting herself with useless medication. After this time, Stephanie's symptoms worsened, and she even mentioned using a wheelchair. I feel that it was because the medication was damaged. She also went onto the pill as we established that her symptoms were very bad during her periods. The pill did seem to help, but now there was another added development. Stephanie had put on weight, especially around her stomach area. She had continued to be depressed and frustrated. She decided that she would not take her antidepressant medication anymore, that she did not need it. Since this time, Stephanie has been very bad-tempered and unreasonable with the family. I spoke to my doctor, who thought that she may have plaques on her emotions, which would be affecting her moods. While Stephanie was working for the local co-op, she decided to accept a marketing job in Bristol. The first day she arrived home at 8 o'clock, and the second she decided to quit due to the amount of walking the job involved. This had a very bad effect on Stephanie's mood. It must have felt as if she had another failure, although to me she had been brave to try something very new. The next few weeks were to be very difficult. She was desperate to find another job, and spending more time at home was not good for Stephanie. She felt her weight increase by the day. She was still on a low-fat diet, so did not eat very much. She now even cut out more food from her diet in an attempt to reduce her weight, but her weight continued to increase. She had more tests at the doctors to find out why this was so. and she was referred to a nutritionist sometime in April. In the meantime, she had to live with this. This latest failure of Stephanie's body seemed to affect Stephanie even more than the MS symptoms. I tried to stress to her the importance of eating to boost her body's defense system, but she was very worried that each mouthful would just increase the size of her stomach. The nutritionist confirmed that it was because her body was so used to a massive exercise regime and could not deal with this sudden inactivity. She said that her metabolism should correct itself in time. Stephanie decided to embark on a computer course for the unemployed. She enjoyed doing this, but some days would be problems getting to the bus stop as her legs would suddenly stop working. We tried to reassure her that we were just at the end of the phone. She felt, however, that her independence was gradually disappearing. During the course, a mature student on the course upset her by telling her that if she lost weight, she would have a much better chance of getting a job. She decided to take driving lessons in an automatic. After several months, she passed her test, and we bought her a second-hand automatic for her birthday. Some days she was not fit to drive due to her eyesight issues, but she at least felt that she had been successful at something. Thank you, Mum, for this document, all about the nightmare from your eyes. You've always been there for me whenever the MS got in the way, or even when my sat-nav got lost. You are amazing, Mum. Thank you for always being there for me. You took some of my pains and my worries away, and there is no way I would have been able to do it all on my own. Thank you for saving my life.